1 minute. I'd like to reconvene our March 23rd workshop, and the next item that we're going to be working on is the operations budget. Dr. Brennan?
Yes, thank you very much. The next item is our operations budget, and our CFO, MITSI Corcoran, is here, and Krista Kurtner. So I'll turn it over to them.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you had a nice lunch. So there isn't much to update you with since the last time we spoke. We have yet to receive any draft budgets from the legislature, from the Senate or the House side right now. So what we provided to you before we were left for spring break is where we anticipate we'll end up for this year through the actual results in January. So there's no revenue changes. As you know, we're being held harmless for the first half of the school year. So we are not even receiving an updated calculation of the finance program. So until we get the results of the February survey and we get the fourth calculation at the end of April, we won't know what our final revenues will even be. So there's no change in the revenues. On the appropriation side, there's really no change other than we did get a bit of good news. Commissioner Corcoran was able to negotiate with our instructional material providers, and so what we thought we were going to have to provide with general revenue went down by about $540,000 for the ELA adoption, so that was great news. So hopefully he'll pull it off again next year for the math adoption. So that was good news to hear. So that kind of added, $540,000 back into the general fund, which is always good news. We did get quite a bit of good news, actually, with regard to food and nutrition services, which isn't part of general fund, but thought I'd throw it in there. So the waivers have been extended to September 30th, so at least through the summer, we know we'll be able to feed our kids for free. That gets them through the summer school programming.
Excuse me. It's just a lot harder to hear with our masks on, and plus speak a little slower.
Okay.
I mean, I've got a problem with my hearing.
I'm sorry. I do talk really fast.
You are talking. Maybe the younger people can hear you, but us oldsters.
Well, I'm in that category, so I should just speak slower.
At least this oldster. I'm not talking for that one next to me.
I got you. I understand. I apologize.
All right, so we got some good news.
Ms. Brown, I'm trying to hurry.
You had good news, $540,000. Could you tell me what that was and start from there?
So with the last time we talked about the budget, we were talking about how the general fund was going to have to provide additional dollars beyond the instructional materials categorical for the new best standards adoptions for ELA and for next year for math. So we did receive notification that we expect, or it's estimated, we will save about $540,000 because there's been some intervention on the part of Tallahassee with the publishers to help get that pricing down, which is great news. Then the other good news was with food service. So these are the two areas that we were talking about last month that we were going to have to kind of kick in general fund dollars to help kind of support those areas. With regard to food and nutrition services, the USDA has granted a waiver that extends the ability for us to offer what's called the summer feeding program through September 30th for our students. Like the original waiver ended June 30th. So it's been extended for 3 more months, which is great news, and hopefully they'll extend it again. So that was one. 2, we received an approval Sarah and Dan had applied for a grant that you guys had approved from No Kid Hungry. So we received $60,000. That was approved, which was great news. And this past month, actually it came in yesterday, we received reimbursement for February's feedings. It was just under $2 million. That's the most we've received in a month. So she's doing a great job. So all of that is to say that we may not end up where we thought we might have been with the general fund having to support them. It's not enough to say we're not going to have to support them at all, but it's all going in the right direction. And then I'm going to kind of turn it over to Krista, because that's literally all there is to update on the current year and where we're at. Krista and her entire team are knee-deep in the staffing process, so I'll turn it over to her.
Hello, everybody. Just to give you an update where we are as far as the 21-22 position control allocation process and the staffing process. So the allocations went out, and right now the schools and cost centers are all busy working on what that means for them based upon the enrollment projection. We did receive the recalibrated FTE for the February survey just yesterday, and it came in as DOE had anticipated. So obviously we're down from what we were projected to be. They've used that calculation basically to help us set up what we're going to be looking like next year, which nothing has changed from the time we spoke before. One thing we did see that was changing a little bit for us is that our recalibrated FTE for our 255 program students, our most severe students, has increased a lot more from the October survey, which would say kids are coming back. So that's a good thing that they're coming back. So with all that being out, we don't have any information to give to you just yet, because we haven't gotten the information back from the schools. They're all submitting their waivers and trying to align their schools that best meets their needs with the allocations they were given or adding to those allocations. So the next time we see you, we'll be able to have that information as to how they've changed and what they've updated on their staffing, and also hopefully some legislative information. So we'll have a lot more information to give you the next time we meet.
And I understand, we had issues with kindergarten this year where some of them just didn't come, either homeschooled them or held them back for a year. And I would imagine that when those if they didn't go to kindergarten, can they go into first grade or must they go to kindergarten?
My understanding is they go to kindergarten. That's how we have accounted for them. Basically, that was one of the ways that DOE did allow us to say there was going to be growth. Kelly Ellington has the data to support 187 students that were basically redshirted that are supposed to be coming back. So we did account for them. So that was some growth we have. And DOE allowed us to add that.
And then, of course, we've got a new charter school that's going to be opening that's going to be focused on kindergarten first and second grade.
Kindergarten first, and it's primarily ESOL population.
Right.
Yeah, in that general area. So yeah, we're also keeping a watch on that, and those schools know they have to pay attention for their staffing.
Okay, Jane?
Okay, I'd like to talk about CARES dollars. Okay. And I'd like to, CARES 1, have we spent a majority of CARES 1?
Ours is all gone. That was the 5 additional.
And that was the
DVJs.
good thing, because in Tallahassee, one of the general statements being made from the legislature is, oh, people haven't even spent CARES 1. Why do we want to give them more? So we could we send that in a letter to our legislative delegation, Dr. Asplin? Don't you think that would be a good idea? I mean, I do, because if there is any concern, I'd like them to know that we have spent it, because we spent it on our professional development, our additional week of professional development for the most part, correct?
That's 100. We actually spent more than what we.
That's what I
received in
thought. So show
funding.
that we spent more. I mean, I think that's even better. But
and we did.
I think we need to just, that's the letter just about that issue, because I'm still hearing that a lot. I'm hearing about you've lost 88,000 students. Where are those students? You're getting paid for 88,000 students that weren't in school, and you have CARES dollars that you haven't expended. So, and we know that some school districts haven't spent them because they're allocated them on a monthly basis for some things like nurses and other things that are coming forward. So just to make sure that everyone knows that we have.
And that is true. There are a lot who, because the CARES 1 does not expire until June 30,
It's 2 years, right?
2022.
Yep, it's a
So
2-year grant. Mm-hmm.
People had established their grant expenditures because nobody knew there would be a 2, let alone a 3. So
Right, we never knew we were going to get any more money, and so a lot of people did. And I think it was great that we did what we did with it because, of course, we had no direction at that time on how to bring kids back to school. I loved getting a document a week or so ago from the Biden administration about how to open schools, and I thought, this would have been great about, July of last year. Mm-hmm. But I think that would be a good idea. So explain to me where we are with these other.
So CARES 2,
Yes.
we just received what's called the request for application from the state
Okay.
on Thursday. So your timing is impeccable. The total allocation to Sarasota County schools, inclusive of charters, is about $30 million. So for us, that'll work out to about 25. As you know, we had 20 included in next year's budget to help offset. And the 5, I think, will probably just be used solely for intervention, summer school, all of those kind of things that we can do to help our kids get them back to where they need to be. I know you guys had a bit of a conversation with regard to ESOL. I'm very hesitant to do recurring, like hiring staff from grant dollars that are kind of one time. But I'm not hesitant about us infusing those dollars into our schools and into our kids and into our classrooms, whether it's through extra duty days, contracted services, whatever it is we need to do to get,
Granted. Yes. Yes.
small group and one-on-one
Yeah.
with the kids. But hiring, full-time staff is a bit of
No.
a concern with one-time money.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but so we've got an extra 5 there that we don't know about, that we weren't sure was coming. I will tell you that FADS has had a few surveys that have come out where they wanted to know how much money did you get, how much did you spend of CARES 1, how much do you expect to get, or basically take CARES 1 times 4, because that's all anybody knew at the time, and how are you planning on spending that? And when do you, because, basically take what it is and divide it over 2 years, because again, this one is till 2023. And so just between the reimbursement to the district of our PPE and our additional sub costs and our additional, literally I included the additional cost of the COVID days, for paying people to not work. The federal mandate was unfunded. All of those types of things, along with, I think I had $4 million each year for intervention, summer school. We do extra duty days for a planning period for a teacher to try to do some tutoring or some small group, those kind of things. And we were overspent in 2 years. So CARES 3 is coming out, which is even more money. So again, I think, we're making great headway. I don't think the PPE costs are nearly as elaborate as they were in the beginning, just gearing it all up. I think, we'll have to replace the filters and all of that stuff again. So that's some one-time costs that we can, align to those dollars. So that's kind of where, in my mind, I have it planned. I still have to even speak with the superintendent on his to-do list for us. That was the thing we needed to talk about. But we just got the RFA for 2, 3, I'm not sure when we'll see. And I understand there's talk of another one, so.
Well, please keep us abreast of that, please, if you would.
Sure.
Other than just even regular meetings, because as things are happening in Tallahassee, it's interesting to see how this is impacting us locally.
Yeah. I agree.
I received copies of the Department of Education that they sent out to all of the superintendents. I received a copy of it from a lobbyist and also from FSBA. I would assume other board members did also. And I have a couple of questions on it. The first one being, now they call it the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or
Mm-hmm.
ESSER 2.
ESSER 2, correct.
So is that what you're calling CARES 2?
It's the same thing. CARES
So-
and ESSER are the same.
And they sent a formula allocations along with that.
Mm-hmm.
But, so this is how much we're supposed to get, that it's allocated to us,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't get it unless we give them a grant saying how we're going to spend it.
Correct.
And I think it says in there that we can't spend it on recurring expenses such as hiring new people. I mean, if we hire a person, it's for 1 year. That's all we can use this for.
Correct.
But it's showing $9 million for something called TIPA, T-I-P-A. What's that?
Is that the teacher increase?
No, that's not the, this is what the federal government,
How school says they're gonna spend the funds, it's basically how it allocates it, like Tara always has the school.
I thought the
Brennan, do you
TIPA
know what this is? The
Title I.
TIPA?
It's Title I. I
It's
think
the Title I?
It's Title I, because that's how we get, all I know is that we receive our funding for the CARES dollars the way it's allocated to districts for Title I. So the federal government provides the dollars to the state based upon the allocations for the entitlement dollars, and then they're distributed to the local, the LEAs, in that same fashion. So my guess is 9 million sounds like Title I.
Yes.
Title I Part A, TIPA, Title I Part A, that's what.
Okay, so those,
I got it.
so I think when we get the Title I Part A, T1PA.
Correct.
Those came to us, I believe, allocated by our numbers in Title I, correct?
That is the Title I allocation.
So that it says, and that I would imagine that would be allocated to charter schools also based on their Title I.
Right.
And then the 30 million,
Oh, no, it's allocated, we allocated
the
it.
CARES 2, that will be allocated on an FTE basis. That's how it's coming to us. That's how it's going to charter schools.
No, the allocations from the federal government are all the same. They're the same as the entitlements. So Title ESSER 2, which is the one you have, I think is the one you have, it's the 30 million. Is that what it shows, is 30 million? Right. So I know that for CARES 1 or ESSER 1, whichever one you want to call it, we allocate it based on FTE, correct? And I imagine that's how we'll allocate for ESSER 2, except for the Title 1, okay, ESSER 1, CARES 1, there was an equitable services requirement for private schools. So on ESSER 1, we had private schools, charter schools, and district schools. For ESSER 2, private schools have a completely separate application process. They get their funds differently. So all we'll have to do is provide the dollars to our charter schools. And while we are receiving the dollars based upon Title I, we provide funding to charters based upon FTE.
I would think that if we're getting it by, if the federal government says you're getting it based on Title I, I would think it should go to
But
charter
we're
schools
not
based
spending
on.
it based upon Title I. We're spending it based upon the needs of the district, because there isn't a requirement to only spend it in our 12 Title I schools.
And okay.
I mean, we're using it to pay for PPE, we're using it to pay for COVID days. I mean, those maybe are not necessarily aligned to an MAE. It could be a custodian who was out ill at Gulfgate. So there's no requirement that, it's just how you're getting your dollars. It's not a requirement on how you spend your dollars. The only requirement on ESSER 2 that I'm aware of as far as the spend is 20% has to be spent on interventions and making sure that your kids are,
And
who have fallen
also,
behind or
do
getting
you know
attention.
if this new CARES Act or whatever, will that also allow charter schools to apply for, was it the PPE, the continuing employment grant that several
the
of
new
them
one that's out, the PPP loans? I believe so.
So they're also able to apply for that too?
I believe so.
And well, do we know how many charter schools applied for that or received it, or if they're going to be doing it this time? Is there any way we can check with that?
For the first one, I think we had 3.
I don't remember exactly how many there was. It was only initially like 3, but I didn't know if more applied for it. But we can find out who ends up
Well,
applying
yeah, I
for
would
it.
think if those dollars are out there and available to them, that we probably should help them reach out to and get them.
Yeah, and they have a group among themselves, and so when they found out one received it, then they all, went and applied for them. I don't know if there was a limit as to how much was available or how much they could apply for. I know there is a no repay requirement on the first one if it was under 2 million and you used it for payroll purposes. So, again.
And I know we're just kind of briefly going over the budget this time. We're going to be more in depth at our next workshop.
We have more to report.
Hopefully, we'll have more information then. Bridget?
Thank you. Well, thank you again, Krista and Mitzi, for your work. The one thing I just wanted to, and I know you just ran through the numbers, and forgive me if you have provided this in the past, but what you ran through, and I followed everything you said very quickly, but from a number standpoint, is it possible that we could get a breakdown at your convenience of what we did spend? Because I think you brought up from the CARES 1, what we allocated that money for. I think it's just good for us to know, and especially as we look forward to the future. Definitely different circumstance than, thank God, that we were in when we first had to figure out what to utilize that money for. But as we move forward and the next tranche, and I don't know if there's going to be another one, but we'll just talk about this one. I think it would be interesting to see where we spent that money. And then if we were going to send anything to the delegation to indicate what we'd spent it on, I know there are districts probably sitting on it for whatever their financial circumstances, maybe hedging the money, et cetera. But I know we utilized it. But I just think for our purposes, it would also be really helpful to see where we did such, because I think we are very good stewards of that money, but I think just for the general public and the board be helpful. Is that possible?
And 100% of it was spent on those 5 days.
Right,
For
which
186
I supported
and
all day long, of
196
course.
staff, for professional development. So that is 100, where 100% of it went. I will tell you, that was our third application on those dollars to DOE for approval before we received approval.
So you're saying the first two were
Denied.
denied?
And that has, I will tell you, that is a big reason why many school districts have not spent their funds. I will tell you, very frustrated CFOs from around the state would submit, based upon the 12 guidelines that were provided for those dollars, but they were continued to be denied. Show me where you had a revenue loss. Show me where you had. So there was a lot of requirements from DOE to meet those. Even though there was a supplanting, a true supplant, you may supplant 100% of these dollars. So I think what happened is at the end, I think the frustration levels got really high because, Miami-Dade CFO literally said, if you tell me that I can spend it on salaries, I'll draw $80 million tomorrow and spend it 100%. So again, there was, conversations with DOE. I think by the end of December, we got some ability, or the school districts around the state got some ability to create some flexibility, and then their applications started getting approved. So it's hard to spend money when you don't have approval to spend it.
Of course, yeah.
So I think that was kind of some of the concern around the rhetoric we were hearing about, we gave you all this extra money and you can't even spend your CARES money. So it was like, that's not necessarily the case. So I think it's getting better, and I think they're starting to spend it now. But I know a lot of them submitted plans to spend it over the 2-year period for the grant, the grant period.
And then for the next meeting, because I know this is a 15-minute, so I'll be quick, but when we do consider what we would be, this next tranche of money, what was the total amount that we're estimating?
It's going to be about $25 million.
Okay, and you have that in the budget as you had 20 in the budget.
I have 20 in the budget, but I didn't have any extra money for all of the interventions that we're going to need to do.
Got it. And we'll have a Dr. Asplin. We're going to have a follow-up discussion on how we're targeting that money. Okay, then I'll save that for that time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Dr. Asplin, in hindsight, we made some good decisions by when we moved back the start date of the schools, that we brought the teachers back for that extra week of learning on how to do some of these things that we're going to have to do, and also some of the other training that we gave them that extra week in. I think that really was money well spent, for the outcomes for our students is some of the things we saw this morning. But also, it turned out a good way of the one-shot deal to use those funds. And, I don't know if there's any training that we have to do to our teachers next year. We always do some training at the beginning of the year, then maybe we can allocate some of these funds for that also, which might be an easy way, because we don't want to make things so difficult to have to report that it gets difficult. But, that might be another way that we can look at allocating the funds from the second group, because those are one time and done.
Yeah, we have, two of the trainings that I know we need to look at right off the bat are our new BEST standards. We're going to be training for that, all of our teachers over the summer and during pre-plan. And then also ESE. We have some training to do there for 20 hours of training for our teachers. So we'll be utilizing money for that and for interventions. And like I said, we'll come back and talk about how we're going to spend that. I know we're also spending, I think we've talked about this, spending some of that money also for summer school, the 4 weeks of summer school that we're going to have.
Any other questions well, thank you very much. See, you didn't have to rush through and talk fast. You could talk slow, and we had time. I know oftentimes we rush you. All right, thank you.
Thank you both, appreciate it. I think Run the Face and Megan Fair coming on at around 1:30. So they should be on momentarily. Are they on yet? Not yet, okay.
Well, I move we take a 5-minute break.
Do not ask about that at all. Do not ask.
Never mind.
You didn't hear a thing. So I watched gymnastics over the weekend, the SCS championship with Florida Bond. That's like being #1 in the nation. I came in third in the SCS.
And Illinois got knocked out on the.
Illinois got a
Hey, Megan, can you hear us?
Well, they didn't have got.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Give us 1 minute. We're in quick recess, and then we'll be ready for you guys at 1:30.
Okay, perfect. And Ron should be on shortly too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I can only imagine how frantic that must have been. You know, I have to say that I didn't think of it as this much, but then as I pay attention,
All right, good morning, Ron, or afternoon. Ron the Face, are you on? Megan Fay?
Megan Fay is here.
Oh,
Ron
hi.
should be joining
All right,
momentarily.
we will reconvene
Megan.
our workshop of March 23rd.
All right, there you are. How are you today, Megan?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and turn it over to you for the legislative update and then ask you some questions, if that's all right.
Okay, perfect. Oh, Ron is having a hard time getting in. Hold on, he's at my door.
Oh, he is? Okay.
I don't know what he wants me to do here. Do you want to just
Tell him to unmute me.
Oh, he'd like to know if you can unmute him. He's called in, I guess, through his phone. It's an 850 number.
Okay, we will work on that.
Okay.
We don't,
I,
oh, there he is. Okay.
okay. There he is.
Good morning, or afternoon,
get-
Ron. Can you hear us? Oh,
Attendee.
I think he thinks that I think he thinks he's on mute, off of mute. Hey, Ron, you're still on mute.
We only have one call in on here.
Can you put ask to unmute and then does that send him a prompt? Oh, he's in as a attendee now.
Hold on one.
But we,
Is he muted on his end or on your end?
Because he's a attendee now.
well, the Zoom makes it so much easier to meet, but we do get some technical difficulties.
From time to time.
Yeah.
He is off mute on his end, so. Okay. I can go ahead and get started while Ron figures out how to get back on the Zoom.
Yeah.
okay, that'd be great.
y'all have a-
Thank you.
I know you guys have probably lots of other things on the agenda and other things to do with your day than hear from us. So thank you so much for allowing us to join you today to give you an update of sort of what we're hearing, what we're working on here in Tallahassee. It's week 4 of the legislative session. I know you've been getting my email updates, and I hope those are helpful, kind of as, with the regular drumbeat of sort of what's being considered in committees each week as the committees meet and the decisions are made. But we are in week 4, and week 4 is when we typically see the first subcommittees roll out their budget proposals. And so this week we anticipate seeing K-12 budget proposals out of the House on Thursday, and I believe that we're going to see an education budget proposal out of the Senate subcommittee on Wednesday, so tomorrow. And so it'll be interesting to see. We've been meeting with the subcommittee chairman, and there's definitely a different. There's definitely the federal funding has certainly provided them with some challenges as far as how to build their budgets and how to account for that. We do have a deficit as far as the state funds go, even though the deficit is certainly not as great as once projected because of COVID. So I think we're only really at about a $1 billion deficit for the fiscal year as far as state revenue collections go. So it'll be interesting to see how the subcommittee budgets roll out and what they reflect, but they're always a starting point. We always anticipate the House budget will cut pretty dramatically, and they always kind of come together at the end. So one other thing I wanted to talk to you about before I let Ron take over, which I do believe he's on the call now, is okay, wonderful. The House last night dropped a PCB proposed committee bill on school choice. So this is their proposal that will line up or be kind of lined up from negotiation with Senate Bill 48, which is their educational scholarship programs bill. The bill, honestly, it's definitely a more scaled back version of the Senate's bill. And I will say that I think that they have been listening to school districts, and they did take a lot of feedback seriously that they received on the House side. It is certainly less expansive, and what it does essentially is it does combine all of the scholarship programs. So currently we have Gardner, McKay, we have Hope, we have the Florida Empowerment Scholarship, and we have the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship. They all get rolled into one Family Empowerment Scholarship, and then there are Category A and B as far as eligibility goes. Category A is for anyone, for any student, and it's income based. So this is what was always envisioned as the Family Empowerment Scholarship. The preference goes to students who are from a family up to 185% of the federal poverty level, with some other criteria thrown in there too. That's one eligibility category. Those students are eligible for a voucher to go to a private school to pay tuition, or for the transportation, the $750 transportation scholarship. So which is similar to the status quo, with the exception that it does allow them to take 100% of the FEFP dollars rather than 95% today. I will say I'm not sure if it's a drafting error or just something that the bill sponsors will work out kind of as it moves through the process. I don't exactly understand how the admin fee works, because the scholarship administrating organization does take 1%, which would then make the FEFP dollars 101%. And so I think that was probably just a drafting error that will be addressed in the future. The disability criteria essentially seeks to incorporate both McKay and Gardner students into that bucket. Those students will have the option to use an education scholarship account just like they do today, or they have the option, they maintain the public school option. So essentially they go to the front of the line as far as any choice program goes, and they get to go to any school whether or not there's capacity or not if you meet that disabled criteria. There are certainly some other pieces of the bill and some other it dropped last night and the staff analysis has not come out yet, and so there are some things that I'll address in my email report tonight, but as far as those details, it's sort of too early to tell exactly what some of the other pieces of the bill what the other pieces of the bill really mean, but I will say it is certainly a scaled back version when compared to the Senate bill.
Thanks, Megan. I'll pick up here on a couple of items. And first of all, I apologize for the technical difficulties joining. That was 100% on my end. It seems that I didn't have my Zoom plugin updated and it was crashing my computer, so I had to dial in on my phone. It sounds like everybody can hear me, so I'll kind of jump into the items that I was going to cover. First of all, the State Board of Education met last week up here in Tallahassee, and it was one of the regularly scheduled meetings. But what was important was a nice discussion on the state seeking an accountability waiver from the federal government as it relates to our Florida standards assessments and other required assessments each year. This is sort of the first step to having either a legislative or an executive action related to administration of assessments for the spring term. The state will be asking for that waiver, and now it will kind of depend on whether the legislature passes the bill to decide how we're going to do assessments this year, or if the state's going to do an executive order that will direct districts on how they're to assess students and what the impacts or repercussions of those assessments are going to be. I would say that we've talked about this before. Nothing is going to be done until later in session or later in the year. Sort of like this is going to be an issue that's going to be resolved at close to the last possible moment. If I had to be a betting man on to how this was going to play out, I do expect the state to issue an executive order that deals with assessments, probably would ask districts to administer the assessments, use them as progress monitoring tools, but they would not be used to calculate school or district grades, as well as be used for teacher evaluations or even have a grade assigned to schools or to districts this next year. But that is still very fluid, and there still is a couple of hoops that would need to be jumped through before it does occur, but that's kind of our latest and greatest sense of where we see this issue progressing. Another bill that I'm sure you've been seeing and hearing about, both from parents and students in the district, but also in the papers, is a Senate proposal to revise Bright Futures. This was an initiative that was spearheaded by the Senate president, and the initial version received a lot of pushback because it would have limited Bright Futures awards just to certain degree programs that would be determined at a future date, that would be degree programs that directly lead to employment. After some pushback from citizens in the state of Florida, as well as students and parents, the bill was delayed, and now we've had two separate revisions to the bill. The latest and greatest revision came out yesterday, and it has moved away from that provision that ties Bright Futures awards just to certain degree programs. And essentially the bill as it currently stands on the Senate side is that the state will create a dashboard that will have to show certain employment data to students as they're choosing, their majors and which colleges they want to go into, that will have some salary data and employment figures that all students who have Bright Futures will need to review, as well as seek career counseling from the college or university. It will create a list of degrees that the state Board of Education or Board of Governors does not believe will lead directly to employment, but that list will not be tied to eligibility for an award. It would be a list of degrees that if you are in one of these degrees, the state has decided that it's will be difficult for you to directly get a job from these degrees, but it will be more informational than anything else. And then finally, and I would say this is probably the biggest issue that still is with the bill for folks who like Bright Futures as it stands today, is instead of your award, if you're a Scholars Award, instead of it guaranteeing 100% of tuition, or if you're a medallion awardee, instead of receiving 75% of tuition, it deletes the automatic coverage percentages and requires it to be funded per the state budget every single year. The implications of that, as we understand it now, is that if you receive a scholar or a medallion award, you really won't know what that would cover any longer than a year in advance, because it would be set in the state budget making each year. So there still are some concerns about that provision, but the bill is moving forward with substantial changes. And at this time, there's no legislation in the House, but it continues to be important to the Senate president. So we'll see how that turns out. Another issue that I want to put on your radar screen is an initiative being pushed by certain developers and homeowners or home builders that would limit counties and school districts' ability to increase impact fees. This is an issue that's really come out of Broward County because there is a lot of allegations or concerns that Broward County is collecting impact fees for schools and it's not building any schools and is using it in other parts of the county. But the proposal in the House and the Senate are lining up at the moment. They would cap future impact fee increases and would require you to make increases over a multi-year period rather than just being able to raise them within whatever your impact fee study allowed for. In Sarasota, based on our research, our impact fees are very low, considering what we could be charging. I think they're somewhere around 21%. But this bill, if it were enacted as it's currently drafted, it would impact the ability for Sarasota County to increase impact fees within that, the I guess that would be, 69%. Or 79% allowable unless we did it over a number of years. So it's something to keep your eye on. If there are any concerns, from the district about that, please let me know. Actually, Chairman Gruters is the Senate sponsor of that initiative, so I'm certain that he's very receptive to any comments that we have on that. The next issue is the House did file a school safety proposed committee bill this week. This school safety bill is very similar to the school safety committee bill that was proposed last year that did not make it across the finish line. But the big issues that are encompassed in the bill, there's a number of issues. We'll certainly include that in the report. But it does, it does impact and withhold superintendent salary if the district's found to be non in compliance with the school security mandates. It does require districts to cover charter school safe school officers if the charter school shows that it can't get a safe schools officer or a guardian in time for coverage on their schools. And it does require notification by the district to parents within a certain time period of any, threat events or issues that occur at the school. So those are kind of the high level issues. The Senate has not released a Senate version of this bill, and last year it was the Senate who ultimately did not pass the bill, but I wanted to put that on your radar screen because there is another attempt to basically implement the recommendations of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, and that's what this bill encompasses. The House also going into the COVID liability protection issue. The House did pass their COVID liability bill late last week and send it over to the Senate. The Senate has their bill on the Senate floor, so we are very close to the legislature enacting some COVID liability protections, not only for businesses, but also for government entities such as school districts. And so effectively under the COVID liability protection, schools are included and would be immune from any liability or lawsuits made against it, so long as the school district made a good faith effort to comply with the government issued health standards that were in place at the time the claim was filed. So that's just something to keep on your radar screen. It's not just for government entities; it's also for all businesses. And that bill is very close to the finish line. And then finally, there is an effort to start to combine some of these various charter school pieces of legislation into a single bill that there will be some attempt to coalesce around from the charter school proponents and get passed. What it's looking like right now, the issues that they're coalescing around are really about colleges and universities' ability to sponsor charters. As you know, right now they can sponsor, lab schools as charters, but this would increase their ability to sponsor multiple schools to meet workforce demands. If it's a university-sponsored charter, it could be for the entire service area of the university, so it could be multi-county. But if it's a college charter, it could only be for the district that the college is located in. And so those are, I would say, at the moment, the major school-related, K-12 related issues. I believe Megan covered kind of the budget rollout, which is imminent in the next couple of days, as well as the empowerment scholarship. House version that has been out, but I know that's a lot of information to throw at you. We'll certainly follow up with this in writing, but want to certainly will be available now to talk about any issues that we've talked about that we've presented on, or anything else that any member has or would like to discuss or raise.
Ron, the Bright Future Scholarships, they're saying that they want to change that to dollars available. I remember when I co-sponsored that back in the 90s. We've had those scholarships funded out of lottery dollars. I believe they still are funded from lottery dollars. So why would the state budget have to do with the lottery dollars? You might want to remind some of the legislators that it's not the general fund that's paying for the Bright Futures, it's lottery dollars.
And that's a very good point. This would be my third, since I've been lobbying and involved in education, this would be my third crack at Bright Futures because of the cost. It seems every time the Bright Futures funding item gets between $500 to $600 million, the legislature raises the standards or makes an attempt to decouple from tuition. But to your point, one of the points that I've made to members is that, Bright Futures was as a trade-off of passing the Florida lottery, and the Florida lottery brings in about $5 billion a year in revenue to the state. So, so long as you're under $5 billion, then, it's still not affecting the general budget, as you mentioned. And that issue is being received well, but the Senate is not necessarily positioning this as a budget exercise. It's more of a wanting to make sure that students, as they're having their college paid for, are choosing degrees that will lead directly to employment is really where they're coming from. And they've made the point that even if this were to cost Bright Futures more, it's not about saving money. But at the end of the day, I do think that a lot of folks always look directly at the amount of the expenditure, and it's at $600 million. It does make you a little nervous if they were to make it an annual budgeting situation. You would expect that would put pressure on the line item funding. But ultimately, the governor last week also came out against making any changes to Bright Futures. And so I'm not quite sure, how much more life this initiative has in it, particularly with the governor's comments. So we'll kind of see how it plays out over the next 2 weeks. But there's certainly, each proposal that they have has made less changes than the one prior to it.
I understand a lot of students and parents, contacted their legislators on that. Another issue I want to touch on, and it might, fall under school safety. It was my understanding that basically it's the county's responsibility to make sure the kids are safe getting from their home to school. They're, in charge of the sidewalks and the crosswalks and things like that. We're hearing that they're wanting to cut dollars. Our sheriff is looking at cutting dollars, and they're looking at cutting the coverage for the crossing guards that they're not required to in the state. And I don't know. I mean, I kind of remember that there's some statutes that talk about that the county is required to provide that safety, from their home to the school. I don't know if, you can speak to that, or, I don't think there's anything regarding this crossing guards, but right now it's the local police and county sheriffs that are paying for that, and that's the way it is across the state. So I was just wondering if there's something that you're hearing up there that would talk about that.
Yeah, I have not heard anything specifically about the, who's responsible for protection of students before they enter into school property. But it is my understanding, kind of how you describe it, is that, the students are on the school bus. They're the school's responsibility. When they're waiting for the school bus, it's the county and local police force's responsibility. And certainly the roads out in front of schools are not school property. They are either county, state, or municipal roads. And that's where the protection comes from. The only real connection to the school safety bill is there is some increase in school district police forces jurisdiction. It certainly doesn't allow them to enforce and do things off school property, but it does increase their ability to provide some protections. But we'll look into specifically the crossing guards to see if there's any.
Well, or if Megan could look up that statute that does talk about the safety from the home, like the crossing, the crosswalks and the sidewalks. I know I'm sure there was a statute that actually said that that's the county's responsibility.
And I can confirm that.
Oh, thank you. And, and the other one that, we're looking at now that the House bill has come out, I haven't seen it yet. And like you said, the staff analysis isn't ready yet. But are we still looking at offering this scholarship to people with up to 30% of poverty, 300% of poverty?
No, and so that is one of the most positive changes in the House bill compared to the Senate bill. And of course, they'll be postured for negotiation, but the House bill does change that language back to saying that the average family income can only increase by 25 percentage points rather than 25%. And so that certainly tamps down the growth as far as the income level goes. And so that is a fix, which is very
You're saying the
interesting to note.
income can increase by 25%?
It can, so that was already current. So interesting. So I don't know if we.
All right, we'll look that up and follow up on that after we see what it is and what the language is, because I haven't seen the bill yet.
So current law, I can send it to you, but I'll send it to you in my email tonight. But current law did state that the scholarship students' average family income could grow by 25% per year. So it would grow, just say it's 300% of the federal poverty level, and it could go to 325, 350, and so on and so forth. There was a bill that passed last year that actually made a change to that this House bill would address and kind of put it back to where it was supposed to be, which is the 25%, that said it was 25 percentage points. And so it would be like 25% of 300 and then 25% of that. And so
but still 25% of 300% of the poverty level is still a lot of money when you're looking at this, because in 4 years, it could probably, or 5 years, it would double.
And I'll send you the bill tonight with some more detailed analysis.
And what, and this, legislature and, are calling these scholarships, other people call them vouchers. But they used to be, the majority of them used to be covered with a tax credit scholarship where corporations would put the money in and they would fund this, and I think that was at 185% of poverty. And it started out for poor kids at failing schools. Now they never have to have attended our school at all, I believe, to get the scholarships. But it's switching now to be covered by our local tax dollars and state tax dollars. But in our case, it's mostly local tax dollars. Is that still there? Or what happens with the scholarships?
So the House version of the bill, no, these are good questions, and I wasn't going to, they're good questions. The details in the bill essentially say the House bill is very different from the Senate bill because it doesn't seem to take away the tax credit portion of it. So the corporations are still going to be giving, paying tax dollars into that account, essentially that funds the tax credit scholarships up to a certain point. It does say very specifically in the bill that the scholarships can never grow. They can never grow to a point where they are funded at more than 99% of a district's state share of the FEFP. And I mean, that would be, I think, quite a long time in the future, but it is certainly contemplated that your local tax dollars would never subsidize a voucher, scholarship, whatever you want to call it. That is contemplated in the bill. Now, I will say these are all details. The bill is very nuanced, and so I want to understand the details of how the mechanics of it work, and I will put that in writing. But it's a good question, and that certainly actually was contemplated in the bill as far as
I know it's frustrating for some people who are trying to watch this bill. And, they can't go to Tallahassee to testify because of all of this. And they can testify online, but it's very difficult to get in and it's just frustrating that such a major change is happening at the same time where, they really can't talk, one-on-one with their legislators or get up there. It's just, but we'll see. Oftentimes bills don't pass the first time through, but we have different times now, so we'll see what happens. But thank you for being there and giving us the information. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? Thank you. I'm trying to say, look forward to normally means you're happy at what you get. But I do enjoy being informed. I'm not always happy with what you tell me, but hearing that the federal dollars will be coming is a good thing, and hopefully, our budgets won't be cut from the state level and may even be increased on the state level. So some of those things are good, and we'll see.
And to that point, on the budget outlook, I think it is interesting, and the commissioner, sent a letter to school districts about the ESSER II allocation allocations last week. He also, he actually answered a question from a reporter that I think clarified one of the points that he made in the letter to superintendents on the ESSER II funding when he was at a press conference with the governor. But it sounds to me like any decrease in the education budget that we're going to see from the legislature, and don't hold me to this, any decrease will be tied more than likely to the quote unquote missing students, to the students who are no longer in the system. But there will be an expectation that some of those ESSER II dollars go to cover those students as they kind of come back into the school system, which, you know, the commissioner said he anticipates if there are missing students that they will be coming back to the school system, which I think is kind of what everyone intuitively feels too. But the good news is that I do think that there's a good amount of language in the federal funding that, you know, speaks to maintenance of effort on the state level, where I think, the initial House budgets are always interesting when they roll out. But I do think Ron and I think are optimistic that between the state funding and the federal funding, that hopefully y'all will be in a good place to continue, recovery and continue some of those initiatives that you've been doing to get students back up to speed over the summer and throughout next year.
Well, again, I want to thank you, more so this year when things are happening that are so important to us. And, and it's hard to keep up with them. And even just reading it, there's, but to hear one-on-one what's happening, we really appreciate you do. And we're very fortunate to have you all up there for us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And real quick, there is one thing that I just wanted to alert you to that we've been working on, and we're hoping that it gets released in the Senate budget that's coming out tomorrow. The Senate is working on a pilot program for reading interventions in grades K through 5 for students who score below level 3 reading grade, and they're hoping to put recurring funds in it, and they're piloting it in a couple of districts, and we've been working with the Senate on including Sarasota as one of the pilot counties. So it could be anywhere between $300,000 and $600,000 as a part of the pilot to focus on reading interventions. We don't have the language yet. We've been told that it is going to make it, but just wanted to alert that, and we will let you know if we were able to include Sarasota in that pilot when it comes out.
That would be great, and we've got a lot of innovative reading recovery programs here, and I'm sure Brennan will talk to you more.
Yeah, and it's really the hook that we've been using is the summer learning academies and the focus that we've already been doing that has been recognized up in Tallahassee, and so there's a lot of confidence in what Sarasota is doing as it comes to reading interventions.
Well, good. Again, that's why we need you up there, is to see when those things are coming through and that we can get our foot in the door. Thank you. Brendan,
Thank you so much for letting us join today.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Did members have any comments for general purposes, or Bridget?
I'll be quick so I don't tail it off the end of the next meeting so we can get going. But I just wanted to thank Dr. Asplin. You keep saying Dr. Brennan, so I have to think about for today and all staff's presentation. I really enjoyed that thorough discussion, but I also really enjoyed having teachers come and speak and their perspective. So I really appreciated that, and I thought it was a very valuable use of time. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, Superintendent.
With that, we will adjourn the workshop, and the board meeting will commence at 3 p.m. this afternoon.